She was at it again. Middle of the night. Porch light flickering, that familiar crunch of her cheap garden shoes on my gravel. I watched from behind the curtain as Karen, our self-appointed HOA president, dragged another stack of my firewood across the street to her yard. The same firewood I chopped last weekend, the same log she claimed violated community aesthetics. I stepped outside quietly, flashlight in hand. "Karen," I said, keeping my voice calm. "That's my wood." She didn't even flinch. "Actually," she said, adjusting her robe like a queen fixing her crown, "it's community property now. The HOA decided your piles are an eyesore." "HOA decided?" I asked. "Because the last I checked, the HOA doesn't have legal authority over private firewood." She smiled. That smug, plastic smile she wore like perfume. "Oh," I printed a notice. "It's official." She waved a crumpled paper at me with the HOA logo she probably made on Canva. "If you don't comply, I'll have it removed. Again." That word, again, made my jaw tighten. I'd already reported her twice for trespassing. The sheriff said there wasn't enough evidence. Cameras mysteriously stopped working both times. She knew exactly what she was doing, but this time I was ready. I took a slow step toward her, pretending to give up. "All right," I said softly. "Take it. You win." She squinted, suspicious but satisfied. "Glad we understand each other." She turned, dragging the last piece of wood to her driveway. What she didn't know was that not all the logs were the same this time. 3 of them were hollow. 3 of them weren't wood at all. And tomorrow morning, when she'd brag about cleaning up the neighborhood, everyone would find out just how explosive her little power trip was about to get. HOA Karen kept stealing my firewood, so I replaced it with hollow logs filled with gunpowder. The next morning started too quiet, the kind of quiet that makes you feel like the world's holding its breath. I poured my coffee, watching from the porch as Karen strutted across her lawn like she'd just saved the town from disaster. Her husband was filming her for one of those neighborhood Facebook posts she loved making, the ones where she called herself a responsible citizen maintaining order. She pointed at my empty firewood rack and said loud enough for half the street to hear, "Finally, our community looks decent again. You're welcome, everyone." I smiled behind my mug. "You really shouldn't thank yourself so early, Karen," I muttered. That's when it happened. A loud pop came from her side of the yard. Not an explosion, just a deep crack that echoed off the fences. Her husband jumped, nearly dropping his phone. Smoke started seeping out from one of the logs she'd proudly stacked next to her patio heater. Karen screamed, "Oh my God, it's on fire!" She grabbed a garden hose, twisting the handle like a maniac. But the hose didn't work. Someone had disconnected it last night. I wonder who. Neighbors ran out, phones recording, shouting questions. I walked over slowly, calm as ever. "You should really keep off other people's property, Karen," I said, looking down at the blackened hollow wood. You set me up," she shouted. "This is criminal." I crouched down beside the burned piece. "No, this is chemistry," I said quietly. "And it's all on my security cameras this time." Her face drained of color. "You wouldn't dare?" "Oh, I already did. Sent it straight to the sheriff. Remember how he said there wasn't enough evidence before? Well, now there is." The whole neighborhood had gathered by then, murmuring, filming. Her reputation, her fake authority, was cracking faster than that wood did. But the real twist hadn't even hit yet. Because when the sheriff arrived 20 minutes later, Karen smiled again. She thought he was her cousin. She thought her cousin, the sheriff, would save her. She didn't know I served with him in Iraq. Sheriff Donnelly stepped out of his cruiser, heavy boots crunching against the driveway. Karen ran toward him like she'd just seen her hero. "Oh, thank God, Don," she cried, pointing straight at me. "He tried to blow up my yard." "Arrest him right now." I didn't say a word, just watched. Calm, steady. The sheriff looked at me for a moment, and that slow grin spread across his face. "Well, I'll be damned," he said. "Haven't seen you since Kabul." Karen froze mid-rant. "Kabul?" she repeated, confused. "Yeah," the sheriff said, slapping me on the shoulder. "We did 2 tours together. This man saved my life once." The color drained from Karen's face. "Wait, you know him?" "Know him?" The sheriff laughed. "I owe him." Then his tone changed, firm, professional. "Now why don't you tell me again what happened?" Karen's voice shook. He planted explosive wood on my property." I handed the sheriff my phone. Here's the footage from my porch cam. Shows her crossing onto my land at 1:43 a.m., taking the wood. Shows her trespassing. Again. The sheriff watched the video, expression tightening. Karen, you do realize this is illegal, right? Trespassing, theft, vandalism. But I'm the HOA president. She blurted. I can enforce property standards, he sighed. Karen, being HOA president doesn't make you law enforcement. And forging HOA notices? That's a felony. The neighbors whispered among themselves, some trying not to laugh. Karen's husband quietly turned off his camera. I leaned in, keeping my voice low so only she could hear. You should have stayed in your lane, Karen. She glared at me, eyes full of hate and fear. This isn't over, she hissed. I smiled. You're right. It's just getting started. Because what she didn't know, what no one knew, was that the HOA funds she bragged about controlling had a paper trail, and I'd just given the sheriff the bank statements. She thought she ran the neighborhood, until I showed the sheriff where all the HOA money really went. Donnelly's radio crackled as he looked through the papers I'd handed him. His expression shifted from calm to stone cold. Karen, he said, holding up the statements, care to explain why HOA dues are being deposited into a personal checking account under your name? Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She blinked fast, stammering. That's just a clerical mix-up. I was reimbursing myself for expenses. Expenses. Donnelly raised a brow. $5,000 for community garden improvements? Karen, we don't even have a community garden. The crowd gasped. Someone whispered. She's been stealing our dues? Karen took a step back, her perfect suburban confidence cracking like a bad porcelain doll. This is all being blown out of proportion, she muttered. I kept my voice steady, almost gentle. You told me last month the HOA was broke. Said that's why you couldn't fix the streetlights. Guess you found another way to keep things running. For yourself. Her husband tried to speak up. Honey, maybe we should… Shut up, Greg, she snapped, panic edging her voice. The sheriff held up his hand. All right, I'm gonna need you to come down to the station. We'll talk this through properly. She tried to laugh it off. Don, come on. You can't be serious. We're friends, family even. He crossed his arms. No, ma'am. We're not. Not after what I'm seeing here. The neighbors began filming again. Karen's world was collapsing right in front of her. Every lie she'd told. Every fake rule she'd enforced burning down like one of those hollow logs. As they led her toward the cruiser, she twisted around and shouted, You think this makes you a hero? You'll regret this. I didn't answer. I just looked her straight in the eyes. Maybe, but at least I'll still have my land. And just as Donnelly closed the car door, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number popped up. You don't know who she really works for. Karen was going down, but that message changed everything. Turns out she wasn't the one pulling the strings. I stared at the message, the words sinking deeper with every passing second. You don't know who she really works for. At first I thought it was a prank, I'm some neighbor trying to stir up more drama. But then another message came through. Check your backyard shed now. I looked up. The sheriff's cruiser was already halfway down the street with Karen inside. Her head turned toward me like she still couldn't believe she'd lost. Neighbors were dispersing, whispering, gossiping, the whole block buzzing with her downfall. But my chest felt tight. Something wasn't right. I walked toward the shed, the same one where I kept my tools and the last of my firewood. My boots crunched over the gravel, that familiar sound that used to mean peace. Now it just sounded like a warning. The lock on the shed door was broken. Not just broken, snapped clean off. Inside, the air smelled like oil and wet soil. My shelves were trashed, things knocked over. The small safe I kept hidden behind the wall panel, the one holding the deed to my land, was gone. That's when I realized Karen wasn't just stealing firewood. She'd been trying to get to the paperwork proving the land was mine. And if she wasn't doing it alone, someone else wanted it too. I called Donnelly immediately. Sheriff, the shed's been broken into. My land deed's missing. He went quiet for a second, then said, You'd better sit down for this. We just ran Karen's financials. She's been getting regular payments from a developer, big one out of Denver. Looks like they've been paying her to push people off their property. My stomach dropped. You're saying she's been helping someone buy up the whole neighborhood? He sighed. Not someone. A company called Silver Pine Realty, and they're coming for your lot next? I looked toward Karen's empty house, the curtains still swaying from when she was dragged out. For the first time, it hit me. She wasn't the end of this story. She was just the beginning. I thought I'd beaten Karen. But she was just the front. The real enemy was hiding behind her HOA badge. That night, I didn't sleep. Every sound outside made me flinch. The wind brushing against the fence, the hum of a car passing by, even the creak of the porch boards. I sat by the window with my phone and a half-empty mug of cold coffee, waiting for something I couldn't quite name. At 2:14 a.m., headlights appeared. A black SUV, tinted windows, no plates. It stopped right in front of my driveway. Two men stepped out, suited, quiet, moving like they'd done this before. Not cops, not neighbors. One of them pointed toward my porch. The other pulled out a flashlight and said something into his earpiece. I couldn't hear what, but I didn't need to. They were looking for the same thing Karen was. The deed. I slipped out the back door and moved around the side of the house. My old instincts kicked in. Quiet steps, controlled breathing. Iraq had taught me a few things about staying unseen. I got close enough to hear them. He's ex-military, one said. Boss wants him gone before the sale closes. Gone. That word hit like a hammer. The other guy tried my front door. Locked. He moved toward the windows. I reached for my phone, dialed Donnelly. You might want to get back here, I whispered. Your developer friends just sent cleanup. Before he could answer, a beam of light swept across the yard. One of them had spotted me. Hey, the man shouted. I bolted toward the trees behind my property line, heart pounding, gravel flying beneath my boots. I ducked behind a fallen log, watching as they ran after me. Then I saw the faint red light blinking near my fence. The motion sensors. I smiled. The cameras were live, feeding straight to the sheriff's office. And I had a backup plan waiting on the porch. 3 more hollow logs lined up perfectly by the steps. As they got closer, one of them muttered, "You sure he's alone out here?" I whispered under my breath, "Not exactly." A loud crack split the night. A flash, and suddenly those men weren't so brave anymore. They stumbled back, shouting, smoke curling in the air from the firewood they'd kicked over. I stepped out from behind the tree, calm as the smoke drifted past. "Tell your boss," I said, "next time he wants my land, he can come himself." They came for my land in the dark, but they forgot I built my home to survive a war. The sheriff's cruiser pulled up just as the smoke cleared. Donnelly jumped out, weapon drawn, eyes scanning the yard. "You all right?" he called out. "Better than them," I said, nodding toward the men coughing near the fence. Donnelly barked orders into his radio, and within minutes backup arrived. The 2 suits were handcuffed and lined up by the car, still dazed. One of them kept saying, "Well, we were just following orders." "We didn't know he was military." Donnelly shot me a look. "You sure you're not running a security firm out here?" I half smiled. "Just protecting what's mine." He went over to question the men. I stood by the porch, the night finally catching up to me. The smoke, the adrenaline, the quiet fear that had been living under my ribs for weeks. One of the deputies handed Donnelly a phone he'd confiscated. He scrolled through it, then glanced at me. "You might want to see this." The screen showed an email thread. At the top, Silver Pine Realty. The subject line read, Acquisition Authorization, Phase 2. My address was on the list. So were 3 others. Families who'd all complained about the HOA. They were clearing us out, I said. "Yeah," Donnelly replied, his voice low. "And guess who signed off on it?" He turned the phone around. It was Karen's signature. Even from the cruiser, she was still running the show, but not for long. Donnelly put his phone away. "We'll take it from here," he said. "You've done enough." I nodded, but something in me didn't sit right. "She's not done. You know that, right?" He sighed, watching the flashing lights fade down the street. "Maybe not. But tonight you showed her and everyone like her. There's still folks who don't scare easy." I looked back at my burned lawn, my cracked fence, the smoke still curling into the dark sky. "Yeah," I said quietly. "And some of us know how to fight without leaving the battlefield." She sent men to take my land, but all they did was prove why I'll never back down from anyone who tries. Morning came slow. Soft light spilling across the yard that looked like a war zone. Bits of charred wood, police tape, the smell of smoke clinging to the air. I sat on the porch steps, boots muddy, coffee steaming in my hands. For the first time in weeks, the street was quiet. No HOA notices taped to my door, no fake rules, no Karen barking orders from her driveway. Donnelly showed up again, this time without sirens. He handed me a folded envelope. "Thought you'd want to see this," he said. Inside was a copy of the court order, Silver Pine's assets frozen, Karen's name highlighted right next to fraud and conspiracy. She'd turned on her partners during questioning, trying to save herself. Didn't work. She was looking at years in federal custody. I exhaled slow. Guess she finally met a rule she couldn't bend. Donnelly chuckled. "You know, you could press charges too." "Trespassing, attempted assault, property damage." I shook my head. "Nah, I just wanted my land back. Justice is enough." He nodded, tipping his hat before heading to his cruiser. "You ever think about joining the department? We could use someone who doesn't scare easy." I smiled faintly. I already did my serving. Now I just want peace. When he drove off, I walked over to the old firewood rack, empty now, just splinters left. I ran a hand over it, remembering every night I'd stood here watching her take what wasn't hers. Every time I stayed quiet because I thought fighting back would make me the problem. Not anymore. The wind carried a smell of rain, clean and new. Somewhere a kid laughed, and for the first time, it felt like home again. I picked up a fresh log, set it down by the porch, and whispered, "This one stays." Because this land wasn't just dirt and wood, it was proof that standing your ground doesn't mean starting a war. It just means never letting someone else own your peace. I didn't fight for this country to be told I can't burn my own firewood, and I sure won't let anyone steal what I bled to protect.